And we are live. We are back with our second show of the day with our advanced social media and analytics class. We are here today with Agency 9. Did I get the number right? Agency 9. This is one of our all-girl groups of the semester, and I've been really enjoying just watching them work together throughout the semester, and I'm excited for their show. I did watch your pre-recorded show, so I know it's going to be so good, and I'm so excited for your show today. Matilda, what are your thoughts? I mean, we just came off of an amazing show, just so you know. Like, this is just a good topic. It's such a good topic.
I was gonna say, we just did the same topic with another team and it was super fun and we had great audience engagement there. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with you guys and with the chat. Yeah, it's a great topic, so it's gonna be super fun.
It's going to be so good. Before I introduce this team, I do want to just say hello to Angie Vasquez, who's one of our graduate students here in the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. She's in our Masters of Digital Media Communication program, and I'm so grateful that Angie was my GIA last spring, so she's so familiar with these social media shows. But also, I have the privilege of watching her develop her thesis, and she's just here today to talk to you a little bit about her thesis project. Take it away, Angie.
Hi, guys. Yeah, I won't take up too much of your time. I just wanted to pitch something to you all since I have a captive audience here. So my thesis is on the hill country flooding, which is a pretty heavy topic. I know it impacted a lot of communities and even a lot of people that are watching in right now. But if you were affected by the recent hill country flooding, I'd really appreciate your help. So as I mentioned, I'm a graduate student at Texas State conducting thesis research on how social media influences public behavior during natural disasters. With my focus on the flooding, I'm collecting data on how people use social media during the floods, what platforms were used, how it influenced decisions, and how information spread in real time. So the purpose of this research is to improve how we communicate and respond during natural disasters in the future. So if you were in the area or you experienced the flooding or know someone that did, please take a few minutes to complete this very short anonymous survey. I am posting it in the chat right now. And even if you weren't directly affected, sharing this post help it reach people who were, again, whether it be friends, family, a neighbor, or even a coworker. Your experiences matter and can help make a real difference, not just in helping me complete my thesis, although I greatly appreciate it, but also with improving natural disaster emergency response and crisis communication as a whole. So thank you so much for your time. And again, looking forward to seeing how this live show turns out.
Thank you so much for dropping in today, Angie. It's always a pleasure. I know the hill country floods were absolutely devastating for so many of us in our community. And it's really important to do this kind of work now. And Angie is also brilliant. And in case any of you are thinking about going to grad school, Angie also did our undergrad program here at the School of Journalism and Mass Communication. So, and I like Matilda too. Oh my gosh. They're your inspiration. If you want to do grad school, it's just like a hop, skip, and jump transition away. So thank you for listening. I am going to move you down now, but thank you for joining us for a short moment. And welcome to our audience. We are streaming live today on LinkedIn, Twitch, and YouTube. And feel free to go to any of those. And I'm going to try to remember to put the links into LinkedIn next week, but I haven't yet. And I am here with an amazing, amazing team. We have Callie, Helen, Leah, and Thu. I am very excited for your show. I'm excited to jump in. I know Matilda is as well, but please feel free to take it away.
Okay. Hi, guys. So our topic's nested precarities of creative labor, and that already sounds very intimidating just to hear. At least it did for me when I first was assigned it. But it's just a really fancy way of saying layered, interconnected instabilities or issues experienced by digital creators, which is long-winded too. But as we all know, social media has changed drastically in a very short amount of time. It was a way to connect with people or just stay connected with people. Then entertainment started to be introduced. And now we actually have full-fledged jobs in this industry. If you're like me, you like to watch your favorite creators and maybe express yourself on your social media apps, but we're so used to seeing their glamorous lives and the entertaining content that they make that we might not think about the difficulties that they're facing. The industry itself has a lot of competition, which makes it really hard to break into it if you've tried, or even if you start to get some followers and everything, you face low monetization and an unstable income. And then they're also very much platform dependent on their visibility, and they have to fight the changing algorithms constantly and the cultures that the audience itself is creating, which evolves as time goes on. And then we know a lot of influencers or creators who take necessary breaks for their own mental health, because the self-promotion itself, it can cause the burnout or psychological strain. So while the life itself seems very glamorous, it does have its own set of issues. And because could you imagine your own livelihood slipping away because the platform you rely on to make money to feed yourself or your family is no longer there? We saw it with Vine. All those creators there, all of a sudden their app was gone. And we almost saw it with TikTok when that platform almost went away too. So these overlapping pressures highlight how creative labor is not just uncertain in one way, but shaped by multiple connected forms of instability. And an example I can think of a creator who might have lost some visibility is Kristen Titus, who got a lot of her popularity during quarantine for cutting fruit and sharing stories, but she took a mental health break, and she has not since gained the same viewership she once had. But her sister, Erica, while Kristen was on her break, utilized that moment to build her own brand, and now she's still very much thriving. So that's just an example of how the industry can change really quickly, potentially harming or helping their careers. So for us to really dive deep into this topic, we have some hot topics as examples to discuss, and we're going to dissect 2 articles. And lastly, we'll have a newsworthy example. But before we get into all that stuff, I was just wondering if you guys have tried or know anyone that has tried to break into this creative entertainment-based industry and faced any of these precarities.
Alrighty, thank you, Helen. So before we getting into the research or the readings, I want to bring up some hot topics that I found recently. So within the last 6 months, and then one of them. So we keep talking about AI as a future threat to like creative workers.
Can you hear me? Just before we do that, I think Helen was hoping to have a bit of a conversation about this. Is that, yeah? So just pause for just one moment. So really good question here. Do you want to rephrase it for us, Helen?
Yeah, I was just wondering if anyone has tried to, like, I don't know, do YouTube or TikTok to try and like build a brand, or know anyone that has tried to?
Is anyone, are any of you? Are you on TikTok?
I always wanted to since like 2nd grade when YouTube was really starting to build, but I never did. But I was going to do a squishy account where I reviewed squishies.
I wanted to point out that Anna made a good point that during the pandemic, I feel like a lot more people tried to get like popular on TikTok just because we had so much time to be at home. I don't know. I personally know that I did, and we're gonna talk about it a little later where I had issues with shadow banning. So yeah, I think a lot of people tried during the pandemic for sure.
I feel like this is every kid's dream. Like my 11-year-old comes home every day and he's like, I want to be a YouTuber and I want to have a technology account. And I'm like, not with your face. And he's like, okay, not with my face. but how about you, Callie or Thu? Any desires to be a content creator or any attempts to try to go viral?
So I would say I share my like personal Instagram account to be public, like trying to be viral, but no, it's not gonna happen.
I'm pretty much the same. When I was younger, like all I wanted to do was start a YouTube channel with my sister, and I would talk about it all the time, and I would make these stupid little like videos and skits with her. But no, as I got older, I realized that that's definitely not for me. But
Hey, Callie, do you think it's like idealized for young kids? Like it's just like it looks so glamorous. And
yeah,
then
I think especially like growing up watching all of these like famous YouTubers and TikTokers now, especially since TikTok is so popular with children. I think it's definitely the goal for children to grow up and create this content, kind of following the footsteps as their favorite creators. But I think once you get older, you realize like maybe that's not something I want to do. Maybe that was just a childhood dream. But
do you think that like the amount of time that has to go, like, do people realize how much time has to go into it in order to be successful? Helen and then Leah, maybe.
No, I don't think so. When we were like researching this and everything, it was like saying like you got to post at least 1 to 4 times a day and everything. And I'm like, filming and editing itself takes a lot of time. Like I've learned that from these classes. So they have to do a lot of that in advance. And now I'm thinking about it, like I don't know how they have time to take breaks as well, because it's also just not only their job, but they film a lot of their life. So I don't know how they even differentiate the two.
You hear about a lot of these creators who, in the process of trying to kind of quote unquote make it big, they spend so much of their time editing a simple video. It is like a 30-second video will take them 9 hours just to edit. So I mean, the labor that must go into that. Leah, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think it's kind of ironic because there are a lot of strategies out there on how to become viral, like posting a certain amount per day, what times to post, all of that. But then the people who are actually going viral and that we're seeing a lot of content of are usually like one-off posts on an account. Like it's not something that they're taking seriously at all, but they just get lucky.
There's so many comments, I can't do all of them, but lots of people saying it takes a lot of hard work and consistency, and some friends that have gotten attention, but it's difficult to retain followers even if one video does well. And we heard that in our morning class as well. Is there anything here that you really want me to jump into?
I think Dustin has a really interesting question about influencers, if that's a respectable career. I think we're now transitioning into it being a more respectable career. We have some examples of people that are kind of entering like the journalistic world, which is a real profession, as we all know. And so if it keeps progressing in that way, I think it definitely will be like not considered just a free time hobby, but like an actual real career.
So Dustin is actually a pal of mine from high school. And when we were in high school, like people would have laughed at this as a job. Like if you had told your parents I'm going to be internet famous, they would have laughed at us. But I think now maybe more so, like I think if you could show and prove a following and monetization, what I think concerns me is that a lot of people see like Mr. Beast, or they see all of these like really successful one, and they think that like that can happen for everyone. But I think the reality is it's actually a very small number of people. Would you agree? Small number.
Yeah, I think the numbers are definitely smaller comparatively to like the past. Wait, sorry, did I misunderstand the question?
Well, what I think is like it's a very small number of people who actually succeed at like a huge level at being an influencer content creator. Like I think there's so many people trying, but the ones who are really successful, it's actually a really small percentage.
Yeah, I think what I was talking about the past was like, since like I think about YouTube was really small. So it's like if you're like one of the first few, that's all you were really seeing that was recommended to you. But now, at least my algorithm on YouTube isn't great. I just see like the same stuff all the time, and it's like the same 3 people. I don't know if that's just me, but I wonder if the algorithm really is just favoriting those that have like the biggest subscriber count or something.
Josh says he used to make money in high school on YouTube uploading beats for SoundCloud rappers.
I really wanted to jump in on this actually when I saw it, because it's really ironic. On YouTube, we have a lot of people who are making so much money from doing like lo-fi beats or like lyric videos especially. And it's usually just like a presentation or like even just a still image with audio behind it. But because of the way YouTube's AdSense works, you can make so much money off of it. And we just have now a whole bunch of like dead content where like there's no actual person behind it. And I think AI is also going to be a huge thing in terms of making this content.
Thank you, and I want to apologize to Thu for kind of derailing you, but that was such a good conversation that it was good to pause before we jump into yours. Thu, let's definitely move over to your section.
No worries at all. So, because we were talking about like an account can go so viral overnight, so I actually had an examples that I found really interesting is Brittany Broski. So she was known as a kombucha girl, and she was viral overnight for that one video trying out a kombucha back in 2019. But recently, she was on the Vanity Fair Oscar red carpet interviewing celebrities. But she has not. So she originally she worked as a bank, but then she got fired after that video went viral. But then right now, she she working as like a journalist. She going to like a she doing something used to be done by trained entertainment journalists, I would say. So while we look up like new opportunities like opening up right now, it's also mean that traditional roles are being replaced. So my question is, so how do you think this affect the people who are actually studying journalism or media right now?
I want to think that there are actually a couple of like big influencers and YouTubers out there who are now coming from a background in journalism. Like just off the top of my head, we probably don't know him, but his name is Ludwig on Twitch, and he's a super famous Twitch and like YouTube streamer who actually studied journalism. And so for a while, he was making content revolving around like what drama is happening and really trying to use that. But ultimately, I think that he also was just like somebody who got lucky through doing video game streaming and then just tried to incorporate it. Um, I don't think that it necessarily is taking away from journalist positions, because at the end of the day, there's always like some technicalities that are needed when it comes to like publishing, especially. But I think it is giving more people like the opportunity to explore what they want to do in terms of like content creation.
I do think we're seeing it a lot recently too, with influencers and social media presences becoming more into that celebrity type space. Like I just saw at the Oscars, Quenlin Blackwell and Jake Shane, they were interviewing at I think it was the Vanity Fair red carpet. And they got some backlash from that as well, from not being like real journalists. And I think a lot of people had a lot of opinions on that. Um, but yeah, I don't think it would be necessarily, like Leah said, affecting people who are studying journalism, but I do think that they're maybe handed the jobs a little bit more than people who have been putting in the work, like have the opportunity to get those jobs.
And I also think that it's gonna force, or it's already forcing, like journalists and news anchors to like take on the role of a little bit of an influencer as well. Like we see now these like big news anchors are starting to have a big follower on all these platforms, and they're starting to put out content like maybe on behalf of whoever they work for and like on the behalf of themselves too. So it's like transitioning a little bit of like, when these news outlets are looking to hire people, they're probably expecting you to have some social media skills too, like that you're at least ready to start putting out content as a part of your job as a journalist or news anchor or whatever.
We had such a good conversation about this exact same thing this morning, and I think it's such a relevant one for us to talk about, which is that, and I think Matilda hit it on the head, this idea that like even a real journalist now, like they're somewhat required to be a newsfluencer, because if they're not, they're losing relevance with certain audiences. Like, how many of you find news somewhere other than social media? Is that like your number one place? Yeah, for the most part, yes. And you're not alone. Your whole generation is doing this, and the generation that comes up after you is also doing this. And so if it's your main source of news, we all of a sudden have this like completely different dynamic to what it means to consume the news, to absorb the news, to share the news. And I was telling the class this morning that I follow all these people who like do little like current events on Instagram, like, and that's all they do. And like, they're not necessarily trained journalists, but like that is definitely like a modality. So my question is like, does it just come into your feed? Do you follow people? How are you like absorbing news, and on what platforms do you prefer it on?
I'll say that like depending on the type of news, I know that I specifically follow a lot of like San Marcos and like specific cities that I've lived in to figure out like if there's cool events happening or something along the lines. But when it comes to like a more global scale, I think I definitely get more of my news from like especially like TikTok and seeing like firsthand accounts of it, because now it's so easy for people to like actually record what's going on and share it rather than like having to do press releases, conferences, all of that to get the same message out.
I see that Dustin says, as a journalist, I get better access as an influencer than a writer. And I think that speaks to the changing cultural terrain of what we value and we think is important. Do you think that sort of the role, the changing role between like calling yourself a journalist versus like a newsfluencer or someone like influential online, is that changing how people perceive it? Like, for example, our morning class said like, nah, like we don't follow the traditional news outlets. Like that's just like not our thing anymore. So I'm just curious, like, does that carry more weight for you, less weight?
I personally do stick to the more well, I'll go follow true news accounts like AP News or something like that instead of listen to the random TikToker that has went through all this research and everything, just because it can take me to an article and I feel like from there I can learn or read more about a topic that I was curious about. But from what Dustin said about being an influencer gets him more info than being a journalist, it makes me wonder if it'll almost be like a prerequisite for a journalist or someone going into that field.
I kind of see it as like this shift into a more entrepreneurial form of journalism, because you don't need to necessarily have credentials or work for the New York Times or CNN anymore. You can actually create a huge following. But does that make it more or less objective? How do you decide when you're going to trust these people? When is the information credible? Do you ever go fact check? Like, how do we make these decisions? And I'll just kind of like throw all of those at you.
I do think the trust factor has become maybe a bit of an issue at times, especially with people getting their information and their news off of social media and not fact checking it before they share it, and then it goes viral and then it becomes a whole topic. I think that maybe AI also has a lot to do with that, with the whole AI stories. The whole thing that just happened with Gerald the dolphin, and that whole thing became such a big story, and then turns out it was AI. So I think that maybe we need to be fact checking before we like spread things on social media. So I do think it's a bit of an issue with the whole influencing and sharing news in that aspect.
It's actually what I was going to say too. Like using traditional news outlets as my source makes it way easier to fact check those things. When like an influencer is like sharing this kind of news, then I'm like, okay, where did this influencer get their news to fact check that news outlet? When it's like one specific news outlet, it's like directly you can go fact check them easier, I think.
I think Joshua brings up a really interesting point. He says, I go to news aggregates like ground news because it's easier to separate yourself from the echo chambers that end up developing on social media. So even though we have these people who are kind of presenting the news online, is it objective, or are we still kind of like feeding into the people who are in the same ideological spaces as us, same beliefs, same values? What do you think?
I also use ground news, and I personally like it because like you can see exactly what is being reported by which sides of the political scale and how frequently. So I get a lot of my news like on TikTok, and so I'll go on to ground news and try and look at the same story to see like, okay, am I getting this because it aligns more with my beliefs, or am I getting this because it's actually being covered a lot and it's a big deal? I think Ground News is really great, by the way. I think everybody should get a subscription to Ground News.
I think it's very easy to like a lot of people just want to see what they want to see on the internet, so they'll follow like accounts that follow their ideologies instead of maybe venturing out to see what the other side has to say or a different angle of it, which can bring more clarity to a situation. So I definitely agree that like ground news is really helpful in that sense. And I do make an effort to try and look at all sides of a story instead of just one. And also, whenever I see a video or something, like, oh, with even like Punch the Monkey, I was seeing like the same story, but it would be like a week later again. And I'm like, but didn't that just happen? And then my mom would send me videos of like what looks like Punch and like the zookeeper or whatever, like cuddling. But it was so obviously AI, but she really believed it. So it's just something you have to be wary about now. It's kind of scary.
This happened to me. You know, I'm obsessed with Punch the Monkey. We've talked about it a lot in class. I think he's adorable. I love seeing him. But the AI accounts that have emerged have made it really hard to follow news updates on this poor little guy. So that's very frustrating. But there's obviously that can be manipulated to more serious subjects as well.
So talking about AI, especially like when you have like your mom or your dad, like the older generation that using social media, they can differentize between like the AI videos or the actual videos. So it's I find that it's really hard for me to like keep telling them this one's AI and they won't believe me. But then, since we're talking about I have another topics that I found that's really interesting. So this one's about Coca-Cola, and then for the past two holiday seasons, they try to make like their iconic holidays upcoming commercial videos, but they using AI. But then for both versions, it's got backlash, and then people say it's soulless. And the most recent one, they got 160,000 dislike on their videos. But then, but Coca-Cola is not listening to any of them. They keep using AI to create their commercial videos. But so I think the bigger question is if companies are willing to replace their whole creative teams with AI, even when the audience don't like it. So what does it mean for a human creative moving forward?
I think, obviously this is like a more wide scale issue too. We're seeing it like in the tech industry as well. But when it comes to specifically like the creative industry, and we have like all different scales of that: writing, journalism, broadcasting, art, music, all of that. AI still for sure is not at a point where it's going to go completely undetected by a human. And I think that's the big thing, is that AI can like try their best to recreate what a human can do, but it can't genuinely create anything. It can't generate its own ideas. It's all based off of what a human's input was. So I think that's just going to lead to us having a different job market for people to like do the prompting, or for people to be feeding into an AI generator, which I don't think is a good thing. But I think it is going to be a huge shift for not just the creative industry, but for everybody to find ways to honestly keep their jobs and keep themselves employed by utilizing what companies are seeing as like a cut in pay and a cut in costs.
I do think it's also taking away from human creativity. I remember seeing the Coca-Cola ad last holiday season, and I wasn't a fan of it, just because I feel like commercials used to be so creative and thought out, and I feel like people used to enjoy watching certain commercials because they were so fun and engaging, and I feel like companies might be seeing AI as kind of an easy way to create these commercials, but it's really not what the people want. And it surprises me a little bit that after hearing all the backlash, Coca-Cola didn't say anything about it and they just kept pushing out the commercial. So I think it will be interesting to see how that turns out going forward.
Especially since like I think since the writer strikes and everything that was happening in Hollywood, they made like a rule that there has to be at least a writer in the writer room. And I wonder if that will spread not just into like in the Hollywood, but in the other companies with advertisements or anything. I know like also you're supposed to display if something's AI generated. At least I know they do that on TikTok, but some people don't do that. And I just wonder if the rules will change regarding that, if someone will get in trouble if they don't stick to them or something like that.
I think really, really interesting conversations going on here, but also in the chat about people talking about. I think it's crazy, like mentioned in class, how they're entire teams and companies dedicated to running AI influencers and accounts. Lots of people kind of saying it's unfortunate to see AI is taking over creative spaces. I have also seen like this like trend towards more craft production of advertising, marketing, social media, so that it's more intentional. But with that, I think we should start moving on to the next segment. So whoever wants to start taking that next one, I think it's maybe Leah. Okay, yeah, take it away.
So we're gonna be talking a little bit about some of the readings that we had. And we're going to start off with the article, Platform Governance at the Margins, Social Media Creators' Experience with Algorithmic Invisibility. And so in this article, the researchers were looking at the power dynamics of the creator economy, and they did this by studying 30 interviews with creators from marginalized backgrounds. So this includes like people of color, LGBTQ, and people who are also working in like highly politicized fields. And this was across different platforms like TikTok, YouTube, Twitch, all of that. They basically found that marginalized creators are more often receiving like formal strikes and also informal issues like shadow banning, like we kind of mentioned earlier. Whereas creators who are a bit more normalized in how their voices are not as likely to receive these types of punishments, even for the same content. So my first question before I kind of continue on this is like, what characteristics do you think are make somebody viral, and how do you think that they favor the algorithm? I think a really good example of this is Charli D'Amelio when she first went viral, because she was honestly at first just went viral for the fact that she was like a very pretty white girl, but because she was also doing like TikTok dances, the algorithm was pushing her more and more onto people's feeds rather than just having like the discussion around her.
Ooh, what do people in this room think? What are the qualities of a person?
I think something that will always have an audience is people that are maybe considered conventionally attractive, stuff like that. And especially if they're using trending audio or like a trend itself, especially on TikTok, I feel like if you are someone that might be considered attractive and you use an audio that's popular and you're just lip syncing to it, it's often goes like really viral. And I think that's just really interesting in that sense.
I think it's so interesting that people are mentioning AI influencers in the comments and stuff like that related to this. And it kind of relates to this conversation too, because these like AI influencers are like really utilizing this, like that there is a specific type of like content or like a specific look that goes viral and that like the algorithm does really well, because obviously these AI influencers can be made to look however they need to be looking for the algorithm to push them more. And like me and Dr. Stewart are doing some research on this, and that's kind of what we really see. Like they all kind of look the same and they all have the same characteristics, and they're like really utilizing this like how you're saying that there's like one look over another that like performs better. So that's like really interesting to see how the AI influencers or the like agencies that are creating these AI influencers are utilizing.
And we're no doubt going to talk about this next week and definitely in 2 weeks from now when our topic is artificial sociality. But the AI platforms are definitely, the models are trained to give dominant hegemonic ideals of beauty. And then that can be kind of like pushed and pulled in ways that are almost like unrealistic, which is so fascinating. But I can see how it would take a toll on regular influencers because they are real people. It takes them a lot longer to develop content, and these are just like instantaneous systems.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of good comments about like relatability, somebody said spatial characteristics, Victoria, like how clean is the audio, the background, and just the overall aesthetics of each post. So, to sort of navigate a lot of these issues, creators have sort of gone through like processes of changing their content to continue to be able to go viral. The first one is through like suppression, which is just again self-censoring and like trying to make it so that content won't be flagged by the platforms themselves. And then circumvention through social stenography, which is a very fancy way of basically saying that you're using coded language to avoid getting shadow banned. And it's very interesting. Recently, I personally started working with children a lot, and hearing them talk, they'll use a lot of the abbreviations that we have to use on social media to talk about like controversial things. Like, people will say unalive instead of like just die, or like simple things like that get used more and more. But ultimately, like when we're talking about creative labor, the study basically talks about how having to continuously follow these like rules and change our content is resulting in like a digital resignation where creators are just feeling like hopeless and frustrated, trying to constantly change to keep up with the structure of whatever app that they're trying to go famous on. And this kind of leads to our second article, which is constructing the platform specific self brand, the labor of social media promotion, which today, even if you're not working on social media, you're sort of expected to have your own like personal brand, which this was actually coined all the way back in 1997 as being called the CEO of Me Incorporated, which I thought was kind of cute. But it's basically just using like self-branding to be platform specific and constantly, like we said, changing content to fit each different app. And it's guided by three different things: imagined affordances, which is how an app works; an imagined audience, which is who they think is going to be seeing this content, like whether it's going to be family, friends, or maybe clients and professionals; and then a self concept, which is basically just how an app is making them feel and how they can show off their professional skills. And again, this is another form of unpaid labor. And a lot of creators sort of refer to this type of work as a casino because you never really know if your efforts actually going to make something viral and lead to a new job. So my question is there a pressure to be your own brand even when you aren't necessarily a creator and influencer? We've talked a lot in this class about like LinkedIn, being professional on LinkedIn, and even just on our personal social media. I think our generation has slowly been shifting away actually from using a personal brand. A lot of us are like going back to using Instagram like how it was originally made, to post randomly and just like share with friends. But do you feel like even like day to day, is there any type of pressure you feel to be a brand?
I'm so curious about your responses. I'm gonna let Helen jump in because it looks like Helen wants to jump in, but then I'm gonna go right after you, Helen.
From my experience, yeah, like I've always been scared to post on TikTok because like I feel like it would just be weird or something. But on Instagram, I remember when like you used to make like your Instagram profile specifically curated and like an aesthetic, or and like the first photo might make a shape on your whole feed or something like that. That used to be really popular. And that would make me not post because I was like, I can't do all that because I was like in like middle school or something. But even now, I if I have like if I'm doing like a carousel, some of like the more personality photos, I don't put them as the first one. I'll put it like later in the carousel because like maybe people won't see all of it. It'll be like kind of like just for friends. I don't know. It's something that still causes stress, and I don't even have a big following.
But this week, Instagram changed it, right? So you can now move your carousels around. And I mean, it'd be nice if they let you delete certain photos after. Maybe that'll eventually come. Yeah, no, I think this is really interesting. And it's great to hear your perspective. And Leah, what I want to push back on is I think a lot of you, okay, let me tell you what I agree with, and then let me kind of push you a little bit, which is that I do agree that a lot of you want to use Instagram like in an old school fashion. And a lot of you are trying to. But the number of students who have told me they have multiple Instagram accounts and they only do that with certain audiences is so high. And so it's like this calibrated attempt at authenticity and only for certain audiences who they want to see it that are very curated. Am I spot on or am I missing the mark?
No, yeah. Like I also do this. I have my main account and then I have a spam account for like a couple of my close friends that I post on more frequently. I think when people are talking about like using Instagram, how it was like originally intended to, there is a huge sense of performativeness in this, because the people that you honestly see talking about this are usually making content out of the fact that they're doing this, which I always think is like super interesting. I think we're not going to see that change for unless another platform comes out. I think like TikTok, when it first blew up coming off of Musically, we saw a lot of people just genuinely using the app for fun. And then slowly over the years, that's when like the professional and like curated content started. So I think until we see another large app come, we're not going to really have the same authenticity across platforms. I also think that just like for Instagram and for like LinkedIn, especially our generation and kind of our age, we're so worried kind of about job prospects that a lot of us are either keeping our accounts private and just for a certain audience, or if it's public, it's like very friendly, very job friendly. But no, I think it for sure is performative. Like you're posting to an audience, you want to curate for them and you want to like get likes and that, you know, little endorphin drive that you get from seeing likes and comments. So I wouldn't say that it's like the norm yet or soon to be.
I want to say that I love this performativity of your generation, because this is super smart. Like you recognize that this is going to impact your future career options and your future life, and it's so front of mind for so many of you. And I think that that is a perfectly acceptable use of performativity and figuring out what authenticity to show where and to what audiences. So how many, and this is for the whole audience, like feel free to chime in the chat, like how many of you have spam accounts? When do you decide how to use them? Yeah, we'll start in here. So go through, you can go, and then Gia, but like in the chat as well, feel free to tell us, like, do you have a spam account? Are you trying to keep your parents off? When are they private? Are they disappearing messages? How do you do this? Through.
Okay, so just like Leah, I do have a spam account that I post for like my close friends. So I post more like a daily stuff on there. But then on my main account, I really have to think what I need to put there. Because like, you know, like nowadays, sometimes when you apply for a job, they will look through your social media and they will decide based on that. So it's kind of stressed out for me, like what to put there on my main account. But then for my spam account, like my private account, I feel I have more space so I can like express whatever I want on there. So that would be the more like audacity, like more personal. And so I can like so then the people in my private account can see who I really am rather than what I display on the main account.
Really quickly, I want to jump in here. Evan made a really good point that Instagram now has like a close friends option. So rather than posting on a whole different account, you can upload stuff to just a close friends list. I used to do this until I realized that I personally like having them more separated just because I can better like monitor who's going to be like seeing it. And also, it just like it sort of gives me that push to actually use both platforms more rather than just like posting the same thing honestly for both, if that makes any sense.
And I'm so bad at this one because it's so easy to post it to the wrong group.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've had this. And I'm like, oh, shoot, that was not meant for that.
I'll say real quick, I think it's really interesting you brought that up because I was going to say that too. And then I was going to say there's like such a big difference between platforms too. Like the stuff I post on Instagram and the stuff I post like on Snapchat. And then on Snapchat, there's like another layer, even like there's like the main story there. But then I have like, okay, so there's like my Instagram profile is like most of the stuff. And then there's close friends on Instagram. But then on like Snapchat, I would post even more personal stuff and then talk about the like private story on Snapchat where I post like my closest to my closest friends. There's like 5 people that I want to see this stuff. And then I go there. So it's really funny. Like there's layers to the platforms and then even like differences between the platforms. I don't know if y'all can relate, but that's like the general idea I have of people.
Again, sorry to jump in here, but somebody made a really good comment about followings that you have on different accounts. Personally, on my spam account, I have all my following from when I was like younger and in school. And then the people that I've met the last couple of years are the people that are following me on my main account. And so it's just like easier to like keep track of the people that I want to see by having them separated like that.
Yeah, I think keeping like it separate is really good for you to like managing your content, like where you want to post or where you want to see it. So I like to keep it separate so I won't be confused between like the two platforms.
I also liked Gray's comment about having a spam account because they don't want to be judged by their audience. I feel like I definitely used to feel the same way, and I used to use my spam account on Instagram a lot in like late middle school, early high school, but I think over the years I've kind of grown out of that mindset and I don't use it anymore, and I'll just post if I want to post on Instagram.
Matilda, I have to agree with you on Snapchat is where I have like other private stories on there and like it's just really like 3 people that'll be in one of them and I could just make a group chat, but I put it on a story. If they want to see it, they can see it. It's usually just me ranting about something inconvenient that happened in a day.
Yeah, I know. At one point, I think I had like 3 different private stories. Like I had like, I mean, not anymore. I don't have that much interesting stuff to say. But like when I thought I did, I had like 3 different ones with a Snapchat. I was like, what am I doing here?
And I've noticed like on TikTok, some creators will have like multiple accounts too. So one will be like their main brand, I guess, and then they'll have another one that is, I don't know, like their internal thoughts. And then like even another one where it's like private. If you're like one of the first few that follow, then you're inside like that club or whatever. And I know the CEO of Me article talked about how that they really have to like branch out onto multiple platforms. But I think it's interesting to think about how they might just branch out in multiple different ways on one singular platform, like how we do with like Snapchat private stories, where it's just a select few and it just gets smaller and smaller of who can see it.
Yeah, and so with both of the articles, they're both sort of referencing like the same issue of just unpaid labor, which we do have to acknowledge that like the labor and the intensity of like curating a social media brand is not really equivalent to a lot of like the day jobs that everybody has. Um, I forget the name off the top of my head, but there's a very famous makeup influencer who was like, try being an influencer for a day and see how it feels. And like the truth is that there isn't really like a need to have social media as a job necessarily. And so that's sort of why I feel like it's a lot easier for people to give up and take a step back from social media now. Because yes, I think it was. Um, I think that, like, again, the unpaid labor that goes behind it, unless you're working, like, specifically as, like, a brand manager or something, you're relying on the income that you're getting from ad revenue, that it's not really comparable to, like, a day-to-day job. But it also just means that people aren't as likely to stick with trying to become an influencer, trying to pursue that as a job. As we like sort of talked about, like everybody sort of dreamed of being a YouTuber, but once we started going to school and once we started having to work, the hours and the energy to actually make that a reality just didn't line up with what we felt like we needed to do offline. So that's pretty much both of the articles summed up. I think Callie is speaking next on some newsworthy.
Before we move on, I'm going to get you to tell us a little bit more. Duffy and Meisner have this great sort of framework of, and I'm trying to find it right now for you, but I can't right now. So it's in one of these two articles, but I think it's the second one. And there's this sort of like informal versus formal layers of invisibility. So if I'm remembering correctly, like in the formal layers, this is like humans have banned people versus like they've been banned or moderated like more automatically. And then in the informal, I believe it's things like the algorithms, discrimination, something else that's missing my mind right now. And then I think like the bottom box from what I remember is shadow banning. So I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about like how these layers of invisibility come forward, and what do you, and this can be for anyone on the team, but like how do you see those sort of like invisible layers creating visibility or invisibility for the people who are on these platforms, and how that impacts, like at the end of the day, economization, visibility, engagement, followership, all of that?
Yeah, so you did a really good job at like the layers of formal and informal punishment. To speak a little bit more about formal punishment and why we're seeing more like companies, social media companies, switching to algorithmic strikes and bans, is because there have been so many controversies of people getting strikes on their accounts that weren't necessarily warranted. And then that becomes a controversy for the platforms themselves. I think YouTube especially has pretty much always had an issue with this, where especially like copyrighted things or content strikes, they're very like, they're sort of on, they're waiting to click that button to get users' accounts taken down or get a strike added on. And so now we're seeing more though that algorithms are just silently sort of punishing creators in a different sense. So again, shadow banning was sort of at the bottom, and that just basically means that their content is not going to get pushed out to the same audience that it was. And there's a multitude of different ways that companies can do this. One is by just switching the audience that they're actually showing content to. So if you've curated an audience that especially likes your content, let's say it's like makeup content, well, as if you do something that the system or the algorithm doesn't like, they're going to be like, okay, we're going to show your content to like maybe a gaming community. And so you might get the same initial amount of views, but because you're not getting the same interactions from that community, over time, your views and your content is just not going to have the same virality that it did. And so that's sort of an informal punishment that is made just by like taking away or changing something in the algorithm rather than coming out and saying, hey, you said this, so your account's going to be banned or terminated. So
a great response, Leah. And to borrow from Leah's language, but this is really for the whole team here, you say they kind of discipline, right? So and just to borrow your language here, does that mean that platforms, social media platforms, are sort of gatekeepers or in control of the kind of, let me see how this phrase is. Are they gatekeepers of rewards and punishment? And if you believe that, then what does that say about the power a platform has in whether someone is successful or not on their platforms? And this is for anyone on the team. Do you want me to repeat that? Because I know I kind of stumbled for a minute. So basically, I'm pulling off of her punishment, right? Like if we think they punish, then they probably also reward, right? So if there are these systems, gatekeepers of disciplining and rewarding the people on their platforms, then what does that say about the role, the infrastructural system structure role of a platform in who can be successful or not on their platforms? Is it truly a democratized process if this is the structure?
Well, really quickly, sort of almost to add on to your question, we talked a little bit earlier about entrepreneurial freedom, which the article actually goes into a lot more about how these social media companies actually market themselves as a platform that, you're just a regular person, you can go viral, you can go famous, and you can make a whole lot of money. But at the end of the day, there's a team and a company behind the algorithm that's processing these videos. So you have to be thinking about like not just what people want to see, but necessarily what the company wants to see. What type of content do they want to be on the front page? When a new user opens up YouTube, they have a curated selection of videos that they think a new person would want to see. So I think that they do like have a lot more control over punishments and virality than we want to think about.
Thank you. I'm curious what a couple other members of the team think, and then we can move on. Mainly it's just interest. I'm interested. I'm not grilling you. I'm just curious what you think.
I know in one of the articles, it like near like the end of it, it talked about saying like it claimed that these platforms kind of have a power imbalance and they almost have a role that to like decide what's morally correct or what's not. And I know some of the influencers that they did like the interviews with might have gotten flagged by a viewer that just disagreed with their content or whatever they're talking about. But the algorithm, since it's AI, more often than not, like it will take those people that are just biased in their beliefs and try and like fit that ideal, which then buries people's content because it's just a little bit different than what a handful of people thought was correct to have on the internet or not.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah, I agree. Callie, last person to jump in.
I kind of get into it a little bit later about what I think the algorithm pushes, so I don't want to like say too much right now.
We just segue. Just segue. If you're gonna get there, I'll follow up with you later.
Okay. Yeah. So to get into our newsworthy example, I wanted to talk a little bit about TikTok's Creator Rewards program, and this was introduced as an upgrade from their Creator Fund program. And so basically, the new program promised creators higher payouts and better monetization on their videos. But quickly, I think content creators realized that that wasn't the case. Certain creators started reporting drops in their revenue and declining views on their content, overall getting shadow banned from the platform. And I think a key part of the backlash was the fact that it introduced videos needing to be a minute long in order to be monetized and in order for creators to make income off of these videos. And that wasn't the case previously because TikTok started out kind of as a short form content platform, kind of like Vine, where creators would make these like humorous short videos. And I think that's something I really liked about the platform when it first came out. But this program has definitely changed the algorithm and the way TikTok runs now. So basically, creators are forcing to change their content in order to continue making money. And so it's coming off a little inauthentic to a lot of people. And the platform is reshaping what creativity looks like for a lot of people. And more ad-based videos are tending to run the platform's free page. I know personally I'll be scrolling on TikTok and every 2 to 3 videos is either a TikTok shop ad or a commercial or just a brand ad. And that's not how the platform used to be at all. And I do think people are also using TikTok Shop kind of as another outlet to make money because their original content wasn't making money anymore. And so this put a lot of pressure on creators. Creative labor is becoming more commercialized, blurring the lines between creator and salesperson. So it's kind of like, where do we draw the line on that, especially on the platform TikTok? And even when creators are successful, it's really hard to maintain that success. I think only really big creators are finding it easy to keep earning income because they already have a mass following. And so, a question I wanted to ask the audience was, do you think creativity is becoming more about strategy and income rather than self expression?
Ooh, good question. Does anyone want to jump in while she's hosting that?
Yes. So personally, I think because like a lot of people take it like doing influencing, like doing TikTok at their like a full time job. So I think it's more like about how they want to make money rather than expressing their self. Because like sometimes they have to promote a products just like so they have to follow like the brand guideline to promote their products rather than express their real feelings of their experience using the products because they want to make money. And I just feel like most of the content I see right now, like people are gonna try to sell something on their videos. And then I think it's more strategies more to make money than expressing themselves right now.
I think at first for like a creator to get like the viewership, it is a strategy to like keep to what is always gonna get likes and stuff. So like even like for cooking videos, the very clean, modern look that they are with like the editing of like you're going for the fridge and then the camera's inside the fridge and you're grabbing the ingredients, like that's like a strategy. And someone might have to do that first before they can try and put their own creativity twin like little zing to their videos. But even if they try to do that, a lot of times they lose their viewership. The algorithm takes it away because that's not what's doing the numbers and everything.
I think there's also been a rise in lifestyle content creators on TikTok since this came out. The kind of like get ready with me's or day in the lives, which have always been popular on platforms like YouTube, but I think they've gotten way more popular on TikTok recently because those are the kind of videos that can be stretched out to a minute long rather than like other content that creators might have been creating before that. So I do think there was a big shift in everyone's content.
I'll jump in here. I think that, like, unfortunately, in order to fund a lot of like creative endeavors, like whether you're a traditional artist or you're online, people have to be thinking about how they're going to be making money as a return from it, unfortunately. And I think especially online, like I kind of talked about the hours that it takes to put into recording, filming, editing a video. People are more pressured to be making an income and be seeing a monetary result from it.
And some of these comments are really good too. I think Anna said, I think maybe to certain influencers, it's about money, but some creators I watch stress the fact that they're not getting paid when a product happens to be in their vlogs, which I see that too on my For You page or even on YouTube. They're like, I'm not being paid by this person, which to me, I think we talked about this a little bit last week on the other stream, but it's almost more authentic and I'd be more willing to hear what they have to say about it if someone does really like that product. But yeah, they will often like show a clip of, even if it's a product that's just really popular, they'll show it because it'll get an audience in that way. So it's definitely strategy based, which is so interesting because I remember when TikTok first started and it was like you would have like a Nerf gun and you would shoot a piece of paper and it would fall and like have a message or something. I don't know if anyone else remembers that trend, but that was so unique and it lasted for such a long time too.
I'm curious if there's really any influencers that get into social media just for the creativity of it. Like, do they always have the motive of making money from it eventually, whether it's through brand deals or monetization on the platforms or whatever? Like, I'm really curious, like, is there a single influencer out there that's like a big influencer that was like, let me start my TikTok just because I love making videos and like posting them to people. Like, do people always have that like secondary motivation of making money?
I kind of think that that's actually the norm for people to start as like a form of expression. I think Carson also said the same thing. Like a lot of the like really big influential people who are famous across multiple platforms have actually been doing this for like years and have built their platform up for years. I think a lot of the influencers we see nowadays, and sort of like we talked about earlier, where like the more that they try to be famous, like it's almost the less successful they end up being. So I think it's definitely one of those professions, kind of like if you're not actually into doing it, then you shouldn't be doing it. And I think the people who get the most success are usually people who their audience can feel that authenticity from.
There's so many good comments here. McKenna says, as someone who writes music, I'm not comfortable branding myself the way social media requires artists to do. And I've actually heard like people who are illustrators or painters being concerned about this too. And I think with the added layer of personalities like Mark Zuckerberg saying like, I don't care, I'm going to scrape your content with AI anyway, so that we can create it ourselves. That would concern me as well. But Joshua had kind of like a backup point to this, which was that I think in the next few years, we'll see an increase in self-expression once everyone becomes tired of AI-generated corporate blandness. And I was curious what you think about this, because based on our conversations in class, I feel like people are already there. At least in our class, everyone is already there. And so, what are your thoughts?
No, I agree. I think everyone's already getting really tired of it. Especially, I remember the outrage with the Coca-Cola ad that we talked about earlier. And even now, if I see a video that's clearly made by AI, the comments underneath will be like, I'm tired of this AI slop or whatever. And it'll be like a meme. And those are just so funny. And I feel like that's just a very common response now to whatever people see AI, which I think is really interesting. I'm curious as to how that'll progress in the next few years.
I'm just honestly tired of having to constantly like second guess if a video is AI or not. And I'm like, because like I'm getting so good now that I'm just like, this video could be AI, but I'm not really sure if it is. And I'm just like so tired of being like not sure. Like I want to know if I'm being tricked or not.
And there was a response to your question that said, I believe that people start doing content for the love of the game, and creators that do that for money do not last when it comes to content creation. I believe that so fully. Like, if you think back to like early internet creators who did really well and who are still doing well, like, I don't think they were doing it for the money, and their audiences could sense that. And I think now sometimes like it like hits you right away, and you're just like, oh, I don't know if I want to follow you. I don't know if you have that same kind of like visceral reaction to certain people in your feed.
It's interesting that Grace says that we should be using AI to flag AI generated content. What do you guys think of that?
Yes, let's implement that. Definitely.
Would they do it? Like, I don't
like. Would it work?
I think it would work, but the question is more like, would the social media platforms allow it to happen? Because I think they're quite happy for there to be synthetic media all over social media made by synthetic people. Like, I feel like that's an ideal ecosystem for some of these visionaries of social media, which is like terrible for our informational ecosystem. What do you all think?
No, for sure. I think platforms that would probably not want to use AI to flag things, just because I don't think that they want AI generated content being flagged to begin with. I think AI is still like very controversial, and we're still seeing people like fully getting canceled over their use of AI. But then we're also now unfortunately seeing a lot more people appreciate it. Like, I don't know if anybody's been on TikTok the last couple days and seen like the AI Fruit Love Island that like everybody's been talking about. And it's like, so people are just picking and choosing what AI they think is okay. So why would a platform want to flag stuff that has even a chance of not being liked?
And to build on to what you're saying, like, I've seen some that has just so much engagement on it that it's clearly profitable for them.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, think how much like engagement these videos get. Like, people are just going to be like commenting like, oh, that's AI, that doesn't look real and whatever. And then people are going to start arguing in the comments whether it's AI or not and stuff like this. And it's just like generating like profit for the platforms. Like obviously they want to keep it there because it creates engagement for them.
I believe that especially they gotta keep the AI one because like if it make a profit, they won't have to pay out for the creators since AI. So it's make more profit for them.
I love Kenna's comment. I know we've moved on, but that's a great comment. But I did enjoy Evan's comment as well. I do not think companies are going to stop using AI ever. They will just be less obvious. At the end of the day, most big companies only care about money and efficiency over everything else. Agree, disagree. Is this good? Is this bad? Or somewhere in between?
I agree. I think I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier about with the Coca-Cola ad, how companies are seeing AI kind of as an easier way out or a easier way to make commercials and stuff like that. And I think the response has just been really poor. And I think that all companies really care about is money and they don't really care about listening to their consumers. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out further down the line. And it'll be interesting to see with Coca-Cola if they do another like AI ad this holiday season.
Oh, it was so bad. I mean, they would give us lots to talk about. Stephanie says our usage of AI should be decreasing, not increasing. It is in general very harmful. Platforms using AI to flag AI feels very not performative, but rather it like cancels out in a way. It's interesting.
That's a good point. It is not only just like bad for certain industries, but the environment too. And yeah, I guess using AI to flag AI wouldn't really solve that issue. Especially, I don't know about you guys, but I get really tired of whenever I look something up and then I mean, yeah, it's helpful sometimes. Like you get that AI response of like the answer on Google or something. It can be really helpful, but I've talked to people that I'm like, this is gonna ruin people's like research skills because that's a true skill. And so I'm curious as to how that'll also just affect not just the creative industries, but people that are going into research and like the like STEM type industries, because that has to affect that as well when it comes to research or anything like that.
Oh, I'm so curious what the rest of your team thinks. Do you agree with her?
Kind of like what Leah said earlier about picking and choosing which AI people hate because they hate all the TikTok AI commercials, everything like that, but then they'll go use like ChatGPT to help them ask a question or how Google pops up with the AI responses or even using like ChatGPT to do dumb little like TikTok trends and make photos of themselves like doing weird things. It's just like picking and choosing is a little weird. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of this either. I've definitely used ChatGPT and everything, but I do think it is a problem with people hating on one thing and then secretly using another.
I kind of want to go back to I think it was Helen. You were talking earlier about this, like even STEM industries, they kind of lose those skills, right? But I also think like writing is thinking, writing is learning. Like you can't just read something and absorb it. Like you have to do something with that material in order to really internalize it. But I also feel that way with creative skills. Like I remember being in a color and design class and we had to like sketch things out. We had to color in very particular lines. And like to offload that to a machine, I wouldn't have learned the little skills and nuances that I did. And so I wonder if we're like offloading our thinking, our creativity, like all of that, and then we have this comment here. I don't think it's just companies. I see student orgs and nightclubs using AI to make flyers and graphics. So it's almost like diminishing our respect for creative labor. And I'm curious, this can be kind of our last roundtable, then we'll move to the conclusion. But like, what do you think about this?
I completely agree. Like, especially like we use Canva a lot in this class, and they're constantly pushing new like AI generative like features of the app. But again, it's like the biggest issue I think we're having with AI right now is that we're having a lot of environmental damage, and we're seeing that as an increase, and that's like the biggest controversy for using AI. But then so many apps and stuff now are like ingrained with AI as a feature, like Google or Twitter or any of that, where no matter what, you are ultimately going to end up interacting with some form of AI. And I think, like, just in general, when it comes to creative labor, it's already hard enough as is for like a lot of like specifically like STEM and maybe tech to respect the amount of like creative process that creative people have to do in order to make certain things possible. I think AI is honestly just making that so much harder to gain that respect, because we're seeing so many companies be like, well, why do we need a graphic designer when I can go on Canva and type in to generate a whole flyer? So
and in seconds, because I don't have to think about it or think about the color choices or the font choices or where things are going to go. Like, so is our whole world going to be AI slop before we know it? Or is it all AI slop? Some is great. It's its own version of art.
I think McKenna and Jacob made pretty good comments about this, about how AI is getting incorporated into our daily lives and we don't really have a choice, and how we're using it in school or some people at work or just things like that. And I think this is ultimately not only affecting us, but especially like younger generations after us, because they're growing up not knowing any better, and they're not going to be as capable of, like Helen said, doing their own research and their own work. And if they're using it for school and things like that, I think it's going to end up affecting their knowledge and their intelligence.
So I want to add up onto Kaylee points that I do believe, because like younger generation right now, they get like super easy access to like AI, and then AI is very convenient for them to use anytime to brainstorm for them. So they just want to get the work done. They don't even think of how to get the work done. So I would say they abuse using AI, and it will affect the younger generation. They cannot their ability to think and to be creative.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that technology has been able to advance this far to use artificial intelligence, but I think it might hurt us in the future with our own individual human intelligence. So I think that'll be a really interesting thing, but also a sad thing to watch happen. But just to wrap everything up, we talked today about nested precarities of creative labor and how the dream job of being a digital creator is much more complex than a curated aesthetic or a viral video. They have to put in a lot of time and garner to certain audiences on different platforms. We discussed in the industry, there are creators or companies that are working hard to stay relevant, maybe using AI, changing their whole brand, or just putting in a ton of hours to hopefully make content that gains viewing or followers. And we broke down 2 articles that discussed how the platforms hold the power over these creators. They can do strikes or shadow bans, preventing the content from reaching an audience, or even the content that these creators are making, they don't get paid for it. And we also talked about the TikTok creator rewards backlash, about how the platforms can shift the definition of creativity overnight, turning artists into strategists and storytellers into salespeople just for them to make a living. So through all of this, we can really see that the common thread in this industry is that instability is the only constant. And we just want to leave you guys with a quick little challenge for your next time you're scrolling on your For You page. Just look past the entertainment for just a brief second and look at the labor that's put in behind the lens. If there's a creator that you really enjoy their work, don't just passively watch, interact with that post, because it's often the only currency they have in an increasingly unstable market. And we really hope that this help changes your perspective for your next scroll or whenever you hit follow the next time.
Yay! Sorry, I just wanted to post your challenge because I thought it was so good. I wanted to like textually place it, but let's give this team a massive applause. That was just such a great show, such a fun show. I also just want to say thank you to you ladies for making this such an enjoyable hour and 20 minutes. Matilda and I are on all day, and it has been a baller day. Like, it's just been so good from start to finish. I knew you ladies were brilliant, and this has cemented it for me. The conversation was wonderful. I loved every minute of it, and I love the synergy and team energy that came forward. But most of all, the great conversations, like your ad lib conversations, were my favorite part of this whole show. It was all good, but that was my favorite part, and getting to talk to you and get to know you a lot better. Matilda, how did they do?
Yes, great job. I know it's like a really like layered topic. Like there's so many like parts going into it, and you did a great job covering all of it. I'm super happy to be part of your team for this like brief moment, and you've been killing it the whole semester, and you're gonna keep killing it. So yeah, really, really good job.
We're so proud of you. And thank you to the audience. Again, I mean, honestly, our afternoon class is such a good audience, and we appreciate it so, so much. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And again, congratulations. Oh, look, there's people saying great work in the comments, and I'm failing because I'm trying to tell you from my heart what a wonderful job you have done. And I'm just so very, very proud of all of you. So congrats on a great social media show. I know it can be really stressful and nerve-wracking, but honestly, that nerve seemed gone. Like a few minutes in, I was like, they have it. They've nailed this. So great work. Have a wonderful day. Happy, I guess we have a bit of a long weekend. Not Monday. You are in class on Monday, normal class on Monday. But have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all very soon. Bye, everyone.